The police are fulfilling their promise to keep the streets clear. That is for sure. We saw a rank of 6 police on horseback do a cavalry charge into the crowds to clear them out of the road, knocking protesters to the ground, dragging them off the streets, people nearly getting trampled underneath the mass of that cavalry charge. But they have been keeping Kaplan Street open, corralling protesters to a small area and allowing traffic to actually get through in multiple directions. Now, this is a new turn of affairs. Remember, the previous police chief was criticized. The previous police chief of Tel Aviv was criticized for not doing enough to keep the roads clear and to keep the protesters in check by members of the government, saying that he was using the kid gloves. He was forced out for that reason, and the new police chief in Tel Aviv have promised to keep the roads clear and promised to ensure that there would be no disruption, no significant disruptions, and no violence. Those were his words earlier. Let's take a quick listen to see if that meshes with what we've been seeing.
Our policy is zero tolerance to violent incidents. They would include body injuries, hurting police officers, or government orders. Any violation of the law or non-compliance is a crime. The organizers have a responsibility. The success of the event for me is zero casualties among the police and among the protesters, wherever they are.
And we've seen that in practice in the streets. Now, the police have not been beating anybody. They have the batons. They have not unsheathed their batons yet. But they have been using the mass of the horses to shove people out of the way, to force people off the streets, to throw them to the ground. And then physically, the officers have dragged them out of the way of the streets where necessary. So that zero tolerance policy is in effect. And we're going to see if that escalates over the coming hours.
And Ariel, directly behind you, we can see government offices, which I believe is part of the Interior Ministry. Have you been seeing any workers being able to get into the building today and conduct business as usual? Or are the protesters also trying to block the offices as well as main highways and streets?
They don't really have the ability to do that because people can always filter through the protests with no problem if they're on foot. But the reason for being here is it's not to block the offices. The reason for being here in Kaplan is because it is a tactical intersection in the middle of the city. If you control Kaplan, you have direct access to the Ayalon Highway, and that will allow people to block the city. Access north, access south, anywhere throughout and inside the city, up and down the country that has to pass through this area is shut off. This is a strategic decision. It has nothing to do with the government offices behind me. It's the ability to completely control the flow of traffic all across central Israel and paralyze all of Tel Aviv for their day of disruption.
And Ariel, it's 10 a.m. local time here in Israel. I'm wondering if you can get your cameraman to swivel the camera so we can get a sense of that intersection and just how busy the uptick is of the protests at the moment. How many people would you estimate are in Kaplan right now in a very busy intersection in Tel Aviv?
Look, it's impossible to actually get a good count given how many people are coming in and out and the motion of the protesters. But judging by the crowd size, there has to be close to 1,000 people here, maybe even more. But again, it's still early in the day, and that's going to increase over the course of the day as the protests we've seen over the last 27 weeks have drawn tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in some cases. Obviously, it's nowhere near that scale, at least not yet, but it's still 10 in the morning.